Welcome to the Best Little Town Podcast, your go-to source for everything happening in the town of Bedford's local government. Whether it's new initiatives or important decisions shaping our town's future, you'll hear it right here. This podcast is dedicated to keeping our residents informed and engaged.
Hello, good morning, and welcome to the Best Little Town Podcast. It is Wednesday morning, November 13th. My name is Bart Warner. I am blessed and privileged to serve this community as the town manager. And this podcast is designed to give a better account, maybe a little bit more explanation of the events that take place at our council meetings, one of which occurred last night, Tuesday, November the 12th. And without further ado, we will jump right into what took place. Of course, at the beginning of the meeting, usually I give a report of things that I think the community and council particularly need to know. I began last night by congratulating Dwight Evans, Todd Foreman, D.C. Foster, and Jay Ippolito on their recent election to 4-year terms on town council. We appreciate their willingness to step up and serve the community. And also, there were a couple of folks who mounted write-in campaigns, and we appreciate their interest as well. And appreciate the voters participating in the process all around. November 11th was Veterans Day, and in addition to commemorations around town, notably at the D-Day Memorial, we acknowledged the service of our colleagues within the town organization. Among our elected officials, Councilman Todd Foreman, C.G. Stanley, and Daryl Updike have served our country in the military. Also, Councilman-elect D.C. Foster is a veteran of the Marine Corps. We also have several employees who have worn the uniform, and I recognized them by name last night. Those include Tim Brook, Ed Chambers, Joe Dooley, William Heath, Hunter Jameson, Jason Toms, and Jared Thompson. And as I mentioned last night, if I neglected anybody within our organization who served, I hope they will let me know and accept my apologies, but we certainly do appreciate the service rendered to our country by the folks that we get to work for and to work with. On an administrative note, the next regular council meeting will take place on Tuesday, December 10th. Between now and then, there are a few scheduling issues that people should be aware of. One of which is that town offices will be closed next week. No, maybe it's the week after. Thanksgiving's as late as it can possibly be this year. Town offices will be closed in recognition of the Thanksgiving holiday, beginning at 12 o'clock noon on Wednesday, November 27th, and for the remainder of that week. There are also several events scheduled for the first Saturday in December, that is December 7th. That morning, the 45th annual Peaks of Otter Christmas Classic 5K run will take place. That is sponsored by the good folks at the Bedford Area Family YMCA. The Christmas Parade will take place later that morning, sponsored by the Central Virginia Business Coalition. And there will be an event in Centertown Plaza culminating with the lighting of the Christmas tree there at about 6 o'clock p.m. And that is presented by Jonathan Hayden. The first weekend in December typically has been the kickoff for most of the holiday celebrations and observances here in town, and that's no exception this year. I believe the former Elks Home will be lighting their display again. That will be taking place the Friday previous to December 7th. Moving on into the rest of the council agenda from last night, there were no appearances before council. Councilmen, during their opportunity to provide comments, made the following observations as follows. Sorry to be redundant there. Councilman Todd Foreman thanked everyone who had attended the meeting. We did have a good turnout based on one of the particular items of new business. He also thanked everyone for their support during the election campaign. Councilman Bruce Johansson also noted that he appreciated the large audience that was present and congratulated the 3 new incoming council members. That would be Mr. Foster, Mr. Ippolito, and Mr. Evans. Bruce Johansson encouraged more people to get involved and to give consideration to running for council, particularly younger folks and women. Vice Mayor C.G. Stanley, again, echoed the comment that they appreciated the large turnout and encouraged more people to come. And on that note, we do meet typically the second and fourth Tuesdays of every month at 7 p.m. On rare occasions, such as November and December, where those second meetings fall on holidays, there will be cancellations, but otherwise, you can pretty much count on the rest of those months, those dates being current. And in addition to coming physically to the council meeting, which is obviously appreciated, you can follow it on live stream through our partners here at Media Squatch. We post the videos afterwards on YouTube, and we're always interested in your input and your participation. On a personal note, CG noted that he and Glenda became grandparents of their 7th grandchild on Monday. Their son up in Northern Virginia gave birth to a healthy daughter, and we're happy to celebrate that along with the Stanley family. Councilman Stacey Haley also commented on the good crowd and thanked people for coming out. He extended congratulations to newly elected council members as well. And he noted that Lowe's has a Hometown Hero program in which they provide materials for needed improvements in the community. And recently he participated in an improvement project at Liberty Middle School where they did some painting and improvements to the baseball field there. Councilman Bob Carson also thanked everyone for coming out and extended congratulations to the new council members who will be coming in. He noted that he is very proud personally of our veterans and very grateful for their service. Councilman Darrell Updike noted our efforts currently related to the comprehensive plan revision and the need to obtain public input on that. He inquired about the possibility of getting more involvement and more participation in what the town can do for that. And on that note, we do have several appointed boards, notably the Housing and Redevelopment Authority currently has 2 vacancies that will need people to step up and serve. I will be working with Woody Watts, our master communications strategist, to get the information about those vacancies out on our social media, also in conjunction with Deborah Anderson, who's our clerk of court. Councilman Tim Black also extended appreciation to veterans, and he noted that Clam Diggers, which is located on South Bridge Street, recently celebrated their 20th anniversary of being in business in Centertown, Bedford. And as Tim mentioned last night, if you have not been to Clam Diggers yet, it's a really neat space. They also have sometimes some entertainment options there on the weekends, but it's also a good source locally of some really good seafood if you're so inclined to check them out. Since there were no council committees that met since the last meeting, there were no reports there. We did have one revision to the agenda, and that was adding an appointment to the Bedford Regional Water Authority Board of Directors, and that was placed at the end of the new business agenda. The primary topic last night was a rezoning request for the development of property adjacent to the Governor's Hill subdivision in the southwestern quadrant of town. There were 2 public hearings, one related to rezoning of that property that we were talking about being the site of future development from R1 single family to R3 multifamily. There was a second public hearing also related to this proposed development to consider allowing a model home office within that R3 zoning district if that rezoning were approved. The public hearing was pretty extensive, and it began with Mr. Jamie White, who is the engineer for the developer of the project. He gave a presentation and noted that the owners of the property had been before council before a few years ago, at that time with a request to build over 200 homes. That was not acted upon favorably by council at the time. Again, that was about 4 years ago. Since then, they have kind of gone back and refined their proposal. Their original request was for 184 units, but they were reducing that to 165 with some proffered conditions last night. The area we're talking about consists of about 44 and a quarter acres. And in addition to houses, they would also construct streets and provide open space and install the necessary utilities. The layout that they had submitted to council last night was slightly different than what the Planning Commission had reviewed the previous month. And in their deliberations, the Planning Commission had offered no recommendation. They deadlocked on a tie vote of 3-3, which occurred because we had a vacancy at the time that had not been filled. Of the 44 acres, Mr. White noted that almost 6 acres of that would be undeveloped. They have also been negotiating to require land to provide an alternate access from this property to Burks Hill Road. Traffic and the congestion that would be created by development in general has been a concern, but one of the main things is the fact that this property would be accessed through the existing Governor's Hill neighborhood, and there's no obvious outlet for traffic other than that. Mr. White advised that they have been negotiating with adjacent property owners, but as of yet, they have not been able to secure a property to purchase to provide that alternate access. He noted that 4 years ago, when their plan for 232 units was denied, at that time, there was also some issues with the potential impact on sewer service provided by the Bedford Regional Water Authority. Mr. White stated that since then, those issues have been resolved. In the previous phase of Governor's Hill, known as Phase 2, there were some stormwater and erosion and sediment control issues that had popped up. Mr. White stated that they were very sensitive to that issue this time around. He also noted that since that time, the Department of Environmental Quality has adopted more stringent stormwater detention requirements. So, in addition to their personal sensitivity, he noted that there's a change in the law that hopefully will address those concerns moving forward. Again, he commented on the secondary connection as being a major objective and concern. He also noted that ultimately they're talking about a phased approach. While they're asking for approval to build 165 homes, they're likely to only have 60 homes underway by mid-2027. He also indicated that they have signed land transfer agreements with adjacent owners in the previous Phase 2 area that I mentioned to provide them with some additional land that would be attached to their backyards and provide some of a buffer. The idea is that they would start construction in the first part of the year. Mr. White closed by noting that regardless of the outcome of tonight's decision, that the owners intend to build something there. The proposal last night was to do something under the R3 provisions with certain conditions, but if that were not approved, the property is zoned R1, and they are allowed to construct a subdivision by right without being subject to further conditions. And he noted that if the rezoning request was not successful, the owners do intend to pursue development one way or the other. At this point, it was somewhat unusual. Typically, council goes ahead and invites public comment for those who were present and registered to speak, but given the complexity of this particular proposal, Mayor Black opened it up to council to ask some additional questions of Mr. White, with the idea that that may have been instructive to the people who were present and signed up to speak as well. Council then engaged in a discussion with Mr. White and presented several questions as follows. One of the issues with the traffic relates to on-street parking, and the question that was asked last night was, does the new proposal have the same amount of on-street parking as what exists in the Governor's Hill neighborhood Phase 1 and Phase 2 areas? Mr. White responded that the new phases would feature 2-car garages as part of their proffer. There was also questions about the alternate access. Mr. White noted that they are negotiating with several property owners on Burks Hill Road, one of which is a church. And the status of that is they're waiting to hear back from the church's Board of Deacons. There was some question about the timing of that proposal. Mr. White explained that after the first Planning Commission in September, they were approached by someone who mentioned that land might be available, and they engaged in that discussion with the church that was not identified by name in the beginning of October. One question that came from council was why this access issue had not been worked out prior to the discussions that began in October. Mr. White responded that part of the new development proposal includes an area of undeveloped land that would allow that connection to occur and preserve the incentive for that. There was some discussion about other projects that the builders in particular have worked on. Mr. White noted that he was very involved in the Cornerstone development in Campbell County, which is located between Timberlake Road and 460. It's fairly new. It's become a multi-use development. And again, he repeated that if their request for the 165 units were not approved tonight, that they would be moving forward to develop the property by right, and he estimates that there would be 115 to 125 single-family homes that could be built under that arrangement. After council had asked quite a few questions there, again, this is very much a digest of last night's events. The floor was opened up to the people who were present, citizens who wished to speak. The first speaker was Tony Orange. She noted that her perception was some of the people who had signed the land use agreements were not there to speak and were probably it was probably an awkward situation for them because they may not have necessarily been in favor of the new development, but they did have to protect their own interests. She noted the concerns about traffic impact and the fact that there is pass-through traffic that comes through the existing neighborhood from adjacent developments such as Harmony. Ms. Orange stated that she had counted 959 cars passing through in front of her property in a 24-hour period. There was also concerns expressed about recent clear cutting of the proposed development site and the possibility of flooding and erosion and sediment control there. Ms. Orange stated her opinion that there probably is not a great need for additional houses right now within the market, and shared her concern about the option for another access to Burks Hill Road that would not dump all the traffic through the existing Governor's Hill development. The next speaker was Cindy Watson, who repeated the concerns and encouragement to get another entrance through to divert traffic away from the existing development. She also noted some enforcement issues with the previous Governor's Hill Phase 2 development and wanted to make sure that the appropriate town and county bodies would oversee things for the new development. Ms. Watson also stated that a traffic study would be certainly a relevant thing to pursue in the area, addressed concerns about speeding issues, and also the connection through the existing Crest Ridge Road that would provide access to the new development. Ms. Watson, who serves as the president of the Homeowners Association for Governor's Hill, also stated her desire for this new development not to be identified as a phase of Governor's Hill. The next speaker was Bill Brunage. His concern related to the uncertainty of the proposals and specifically the discussion about the future connection to the new proposed development that has not yet been secured. Again, the developer stated they are in negotiations but have not been able to reach any agreement to purchase the property yet. He raised the question again of why the other access had not been obtained before pursuing the development proposal. He also expressed concerns about the utilities, namely electric and sewer, being able to handle this much new development. He also expressed his concern about the impact of development on traffic in the area in general, and summed up by stating his view that a lot of the details of the proposal are still too ambiguous at this time. The next speaker was Luana Duty, who spoke about the cul-de-sac on Governor's Hill Phase 2 and the fact that there will be an emergency access provided to the new area of development for emergency vehicles. She also stated that they are already seeing some deterioration to the streets on the adjacent existing development from the lumber trucks that have been acting in the proposed development area. Stephanie and Mike Griffin were the next speakers. They also expressed their concerns about the ambiguity of the specifics of the proposal. They talked about existing traffic concerns in the existing area and noted that they cannot back out of their driveway currently due to the level of and volume of cars in the existing Governor's Hill area. She also noted that for them to get to work, they typically go out Industrial Avenue and have to turn left onto Burks Hill Road, which is already a challenge. In response to a question raised at this point, Mr. White interjected and stated that the proffers for land transfers to all the people who would be effective would be offered to all, I think he identified 12 properties, even though only 10 of those owners had signed agreements. So they expressed a refinement of their proffers to note that even though the two other people had not signed agreements, they would intend to transfer that 33-foot strip of land to those property owners as well. Ed Daniel rose to speak. He noted he is a resident of the existing area, and I think he said he was a resident of Governor's Hill Phase 2, shared his view that development is going to occur on this property one way or another, and traffic is going to increase as a result. He expressed his view that with the proffers and the rezoning request, he and the other residents of the cul-de-sac who would be affected by the land transfer would be able to get something that they thought they already had in terms of their backyard dimensions. And he saw that as beneficial in terms of remedying a situation that is negatively impacting them. William Polkowski spoke next. He shared his view that there were differences in each phase from Governor's Hill Phase 1 to Governor's Hill Phase 2, and that this also represents a change with this new development. He expressed his opinion that the developers have done a decent job of offering a remedy to the people in Phase 2 and encouraged council to consider that in their deliberations. The next speaker was Jeff Allen, who is part of the development group proposing the rezoning. He reiterated that the new development would not be part of Phase 1 or Phase 2 of Governor's Hill. He also mentioned his previous involvement with projects in the Lynchburg area, including Cornerstone and Windhurst. He noted that if they built by right under the existing R1 zoning, there would be a significantly different price point associated with those homes, and noted that the rezoning to R3 would give them the opportunity to offer more affordable housing. With that, the public hearing for the rezoning was concluded. The public hearing for the model home office was then opened. No one spoke to that issue. Of course, that issue is contingent upon approval of the rezoning request. At that point, in a somewhat unusual action, council reopened the public hearing for the rezoning to address the proffer discussion and to clarify Mr. White's point that all the conditions, including the ability to preserve land for a future connection and the transfer of property to the specific properties, 12 properties in Phase 2, would be considered and received as part of the proposal. That clarification reached, council then closed the public hearing and entered into debate of the project. Further background, just for those who are interested, is that this has been a proposal that's been a long time coming. The Planning Commission first held a public hearing back on September 15th to consider a recommendation regarding the redevelopment proposal and particularly the rezoning. They tabled that request back on September 5th in order to get more information on the issues that they heard at that meeting. They discussed it further at their October 3rd meeting. On October 3rd, they heard an update from the applicant, who at that point had met with property owners and provided a new plan indicating the 33-foot land transfer. There were also proffers at that time which included a commitment to pursue the land and the emergency access road. A motion to recommend approval of that zoning request with the revised buffer area plan and proffers failed to pass, again on a 3-3 tie vote. Town Council entered into extensive discussion of the project amongst themselves. Without trying to cover that bit by bit, I would encourage folks to go to the recording of last night's meeting for more details. Ultimately, Mayor Black made a motion to approve the rezoning request, which was seconded by Mr. Bob Carson. And after lengthy discussion, that vote failed. Mayor Black, Councilman Carson, and Councilman Updike were the members of council who voted in favor of the rezoning. Councilman Foreman, Councilman Haley, Councilman Johansson, and Vice Mayor Stanley voted against it. So the motion to rezone failed by a vote of 4-3. The next item of business related to the possibility of a mobile home office for sale of the properties in the development area that was discussed previously. That was tied to approval of the rezoning in the R3 zoning district. And since the rezoning was not approved, there was no action taken on a model home office within an R3 zoned piece of property. Part of the discussion related to the nature of what will happen with this property, and it was clear in the council discussion that development of this 44 acres will take place in some form or fashion. And so the choice was between a rezoning with 165 units or a by right development of 115 to 125 units. And council wanted to make sure everyone understood that even though the proposal to decline 165 units with proffers was voted down, that there still will be development that takes place and there will not be associated conditions with that development. Moving on to the remainder of the new business items last night, council appropriated a budget transfer to the Economic Development Authority, which basically was a matter of moving some funding to them from the meals tax. 0.5% of the meals tax in the town of Bedford is collected and given to the Economic Development Authority for purposes of economic development. There was a transfer of $160,000 in the budget. It turns out that the 5% generated an additional $7,700, which council unanimously voted to pass along to the Economic Development Authority under their operating policy and practice. The next item of new business related to another budget transfer to the Redevelopment and Housing Authority of approximately $29,000 that had been on our books related to our status as a former Main Street organization. The town was an active participant in that organization until about, I'm going to say, in the neighborhood of 10 years ago. At that time, the town dropped its active status. It still maintains an affiliate status, but part of its support of Main Street was to provide funding for activities at one time, including personnel costs. And when that local organization went away, there were still $29,157 on the books. Town council voted unanimously last night to transfer that to the Redevelopment and Housing Authority to be dedicated for the community development block grant activities that are currently ongoing. The last item of new business related to a budget amendment to fund the electric utility rate study. Town council on September 24th granted approval to enter into contract negotiations with a consultant known as Rathalos as the successful responder to our request for proposals for the rate study dealing with our electric utility. In addition to looking at the rate design, they will also look at the revenue requirements of the utility as well as some operational issues. The project timeline is approximately 4 to 6 months for completion. Contract was successfully negotiated effective on October 7th. And last night, council improved $50,254 to actually fund that work. So Rathalos is on the ground looking at all aspects of the business operation of our electric utility, and we look forward to receiving their comments and recommendations in approximately 6 months. Final item of new business was the consent agenda item that was added, and that related to the appointment of a member to the Bedford Regional Water Authority Board of Directors. The Regional Water Authority is a separate quasi-governmental entity that runs the water and sewer systems, but it is appointed by members of the Board of Supervisors and the Town Council based on the apportionment of customers within each geographic area. The town has 2 seats on the board. One of those seats expires December 31st, 2024. That has been filled by Rusty Manziel, who has served very capably, but Mr. Manziel indicated that he had no interest in continuing. The town advertised the vacancy, and Mr. Steve Rush expressed an interest in being appointed. There being no other citizens who volunteered to serve, council voted unanimously last night to appoint Mr. Steve Rush to serve on the Bedford Regional Water Authority. His term will commence on January 1st of this year and will expire on December 31st, 2028. That concluded the business activities last night. Again, it was a long meeting, a lot of good discussion. Probably a difficult meeting in terms of logistics and maybe just general participation. I will note that these are the kinds of conversations that take place in a growing community. So, looking for the positives as we always do, it's good to know that we have interest and we have an engaged citizenry that wants to participate in those discussions. And frankly, there will probably be more of those to come as more people discover what a true gem Bedford is, and people follow through on their desire to come live here among us. And on that note, I will close by saying I'm one of those people who considers it a great joy and privilege to live here. We appreciate the beautiful landscape in which we live in, the change of the seasons, and the blessings of good neighbors who enhance our experience on a daily basis. Until the next time when I join you on this podcast, I hope everyone has a very safe and happy Thanksgiving season. Hope you stay warm and comfortable as things get colder. And we welcome you to join us once again, probably in December, on the Best Little Town podcast.